Backstage, Todd Bettingill is with Bam Bam Bigelow. We see footage of the Rumble and Bigelow's confrontation with Lawrence Taylor, then LT and Bigelow confrontation at a WrestleMania promotional event, which is outside. Bigelow says he's not going to be the guy who is remembered for losing to Lawrence Taylor. He says the $1 Million Team will watch his back, and he says this is his world. LT's not coming into WWF and making a fool of him.
It's a weird promo, this one, because I found that it's really stood out because it's a mid-90s promo where he's not just screaming constantly, which is something that's obviously kind of come in recently. But it kind of came across that he was quite confident and arrogant, which I guess ultimately would be his downfall in the match. But it's just a bit weird. It's just a bit of a weird promo, I thought. He didn't seem like he was interested in it, in my opinion.
Interesting. Matt, what did you think?
It's just really bland. I think this may have been the first time I've heard Bam Bam Bigelow speak. I don't think I knew what his voice sounded like. It was just really bland, and yeah, he did seem kind of disinterested. He's just reading out his shopping list for the week. It just wasn't any good. I go to Tesco, pick up the milk and the bread. Yeah,
I didn't think he seemed disinterested. I just think he felt like he wasn't natural in front of the natural talking. Like he's just ultimately that's why he's got the $1 Million Man, right? He's the manager. That's why isn't $1 Million Man Ted DiBiase there doing this promo for him, making it seem more important? Because ultimately, otherwise, there's no real point in having him. And so, yeah, I think it was terrible, but it didn't really stand out for me as anything special or interesting. And it was an interesting angle they're coming at it from here, which is that if Bam Bam Bigelow loses, it's an embarrassment to him, which I guess it is, but it's, I don't know. For example, we've seen lots of matches where in recent years where, the celebrities have wrestled in the ring, but they've not taken that angle so much in recent years, which I guess is kind of strange because it should be embarrassing it should be, I guess the reason they can't do it now, especially can't do it now is because of Logan Paul actually taking the world champion to the limit. Like once you've done that, you've kind of broken that forever. But realistically, that should be an embarrassment to Roman Reigns that Logan Paul was even able to spend 3 minutes in the ring with him, let alone take him to the limit.
God, that was great though.
Maybe, and I don't know, maybe in this day and age you can accept that because of the entertainment value, but I don't know. It just felt a bit diminishing for a person like Roman Reigns to do that. But hell, that's a whole different thing. But whatever the case, that was clearly a major thing that was going on here. Bigelow, in terms of his approach to this match, was I can't be embarrassed by it. McMahon introduces the $1 Million Team: King Kong Bundy, Tatanka, Nikolai Volkov, Kama, IRS, and Ted DiBiase. Just again to sort of further talk about Bundy, he'd obviously lost to The Undertaker being one of the biggest stars in the company. Bundy pretty much after this point didn't do anything. There was nothing left for him to do. He just jobbed out basically in Raw and Superstars matches.
I like that they all jogged to the ring one by one.
Yeah.
And that Nikolai Volkov is wearing a bizarre t-shirt, which is like the $1 Million Man's tux, but as a t-shirt with no trousers.
With cents on it rather than dollars.
Dollars, yeah.
And the thing that says the property of $1 Million Man. So I watched a few episodes from mid-94 of Raw not long ago, and there's this, basically Volkov's character is that he's got no money left. He's become bankrupt following a long and lengthy wrestling career, and effectively $1 Million Man's bought him and he's his property effectively, and it's almost like a sense of sympathy on Volkov rather than this guy being part of the $1 Million Team. Then of course he comes out here and you're like, well, that doesn't fit anymore because this is now the big stage. You would have thought DiBiase would be like, well, Volkov can't be part of it. He's not good enough.
Yeah, bizarre.
Really. Vince then introduces Lawrence Taylor's All-Pro Team: Ken Norton, Chris Spielman, Reggie Jackson, Carl Back, Steve McMichael, and Reggie White. While these guys enter, Salt and Pepper cheer them on from the ringside.
It's the most unconvincing, enthusiastic dancing I've ever seen.
Before the participants enter, there is a physical altercation between the two teams. Bam Bam Bigelow then comes to the ring and he momentarily goes after Salt and Pepper and then leaves them to their own devices. He's got bigger fish to fry. He's about to compete in the main event of WrestleMania. So the main event is Lawrence Taylor versus Bam Bam Bigelow. They've each got their teams around the ring. It's an 11-minute match. It ends when Lawrence Taylor hits a sort of jumping, running forearm elbow thing from the second rope. Pat Patterson is the special referee for this one, and that's the match. Tom, give your thoughts on this one.
So Bam Bam Bigelow, he comes down, is wearing a very fetching leather jacket, which he takes off to scare Salt and Pepper with, or attempts to frighten Salt and Pepper with, and then he puts it back on again. He gets in the ring and does the old Hillbilly Jim cartwheel, which is a very bizarre move for a really hard heel character to just bust out a cartwheel. But I'm in on it, and maybe it was practice for his bizarre moonsault that he does later on in the match. Bam Bam Bigelow does a great job in this match in putting Lawrence Taylor over and making him look like a threat. But my question is why? Do you know what I mean? Like, why? What is the point in this? He does a great job at it. All it does is make Bam Bam look like an absolute... We've used the phrase a lot in this episode. He looks like an absolute jabroni in this match, does Bam Bam. Because you can see the amount of work that he's putting in as a performer. But as a character, he's just jobbed out to a guy who is not a wrestler. Now, the moves, to be fair to him, that Lawrence Taylor does actually look pretty decent. Like, a lot better than I was expecting. But it's really bad. And there's a moment in the match that made me feel so sad, which is when Bam Bam Bigelow puts on the worst Boston Crab I've ever seen. There's a good bit of commentary from Jerry Lawler where he says it's a Boston Crab on a New York Giant, which I quite liked, knowing the sporting kind of rivalry between New York and Boston. But it's just a bizarre match, a really weird decision, and coupled with what we said earlier in the show about how the LT gets his win, and that's just it, is really weird. I do quite like the fact that DiBiase is berating Bam Bam Bigelow as they walk down the entrance ramp at the end of the match when JR is trying to interview them. But it's just weird. It ends Bam Bam's career in WWF, at least anyway. I know he went on to have a pretty decent run in ECW and got to get some of that credibility back. But it's the actual quality of the match is better than I thought it was going to be. But the overall package of it and the decision making behind it happening in the manner that it does makes it pointless to me.
What do you say about it? I mean, well, for a start, I don't particularly care about the NFL. So for me, I was kind of a little bit switched off already. It really wasn't to my taste. Now, I know, okay, it's more for an American audience. Okay, I kind of get that, celebrity. But it kind of felt like it would have been a bit more better suited to like a house show audience or just, for maybe a city they're in one night, this is a match, cool. Local guy, local NFL player goes against, Bam Bam, wherever. It didn't feel like a WrestleMania main event. And I can't really think of one before or after that, really made you think that was the main event. Like, it's at least, going today anyway, it's meant to be almost a prestigious thing to say, hey, I was the main event of WrestleMania. And if I was Bam Bam Bigelow, I wouldn't be trumpeting that fact, based on this. As for Lawrence Taylor, okay, do you know what? He's quite athletic, evidently. He did some stuff well. He moved quite well. It definitely looked like he hit pretty hard. I'm sure Bam Bam was quite happy for him to say, hey, just lay it in if you need to. So, that was all right. But yeah, I mean, like I said, I can't think of a Mania that ever ended on such a whimper than this. I mean, it was basically, it felt like just like a jabrona-fried friggin' lumberjack match. It was just, this is what you were offering? Really, really boring. Didn't feel like it mattered. Just waste of time. I mean, poor Bam Bam Bigelow. Yeah, I mean, Ted DiBiase undergoing him after the match as well. This was not any good, and it was just a waste of time.
So I don't know how big a deal Lawrence Taylor is because I don't know anything about NFL either, but I've looked him up and he's considered apparently one of, if not the best player in his position of all time. He's a NFL Hall of Famer and he was a New York Giant, which are a very, very big NFL franchise. So I'm sure he's was a massive star in American sports. He's had some problems though since, and he had some problems during his career. In fact, he's a bit of a dodgy character. He's a bit of a whatever, but I'm sure at the time it was a big deal. Bam Bam Bigelow, it's interesting that you pulled out the idea of him being in the main event of WrestleMania as being something that he wouldn't want to necessarily tell people about because it wasn't such a big deal. Actually, they had to convince Bigelow to do this because he was concerned about his own credibility as a wrestler. Again, in a time when still old school attitudes were prevailing. And if you sold quite heavily for a non-wrestler, let alone lose to them, you were going to suffer as a consequence of that. So they had to convince him to do it. And they convinced him by saying he'd get a babyface turn and a main event run. Now, we've already discussed the fact they've got an incredibly weighty babyface main event side of the roster. Bigelow is now going to turn babyface at probably the worst possible time he could, because actually, if he stayed on the heel side, there's all kinds of opportunities for him to face, Undertaker and Diesel and other people. But no, he's going to turn babyface. They did give him a sort of main event run on house shows for a little bit after this point, and he also headlined King of the Ring alongside Diesel against Tatanka and Sid, but it didn't amount to much, and by the end of the year he was gone. So it didn't work out well for Bigelow in the long run. Although, if he's good in these days, I think what's interesting is that the idea of him having been in the WrestleMania main event might have been, if he was still alive, might have actually been a bit of a brag, but he wasn't of that he wasn't of that period, that era where that actually was the thing to brag about. You know, your accomplishments in terms of winning and losing was more of a thing than, I headlined WrestleMania kind of thing.
What you just said then, Bam Bam Bigelow and Diesel versus Sid and Tatanka. So it is an epitome of, tell me you're from a wrestling card from 1995 without telling me you're from a wrestling card from 1995. You list those four people and you're like, there we go.
The match itself was all right. I think Lawrence Taylor did quite well, and Bam Bam Bigelow is my MVP for the fact that he managed to get through this match, put over the NFL star, and did the business. And you can't argue with that. But it wasn't anything special. But it was okay. It was, for what it was expected to be for me, it was okay. And I think that kind of, those two matches, Shawn Michaels and Bigelow, for me, save this card to some extent. I think in terms of what it did going forward, nothing. But then it didn't matter. Bigelow, in truth, despite the promises that they made to him, they didn't care. Bigelow was just somebody, wasn't a main event guy before the show, wasn't really one afterwards, despite what they told him that they were going to try and do. So they didn't really care that he'd lost. It wasn't someone that they needed to protect in their eyes, so they didn't. And so he lost. But it's just the way, again, that presentation. I've said this before. If you present something as being important, even if in truth it's not, if you present it as being important, people will take it as being important, or they're much more likely to anyway. So if after this match they'd given Lawrence Taylor a bit of a kind of celebration in the ring, and I don't know, had him even talk to the audience, haven't talked to people and going, this is my one wrestling match, I'm really pleased to have won it, and the main event of WrestleMania is a major deal for me, would have made it feel a little bit important. But the way that the match was done, we're off air, it's done, it's all over, just felt so pointless.